So I recently finished playing Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4 on the original Xbox. I'm a pretty casual fan of the Tony Hawk video games. I really like Tony Hawk's Underground 1 and 2, those were the two that I played the most. And Pro Skater 4 feels pretty much at home with those games. It's running on like the same engine as far as I could tell, and the gameplay feels very reminiscent of the Underground games, with the exception of not being able to get off your board, which I'll get into later. Unlike the Underground games, this game doesn't really have an overarching story. It's more so just going and completing goals for different people. But it's weird, it's not like classic Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, like 1 and 2, where it's just like collect the skate letters or collect combos. Those are in this game, but each of the NPCs that you get goals from have like a little blurb about what you're supposed to be doing. So it's kind of like a halfway point between no story and a Tony Hawk story. Most of the missions boil down to just a random person that you come across and they need you to do this random thing for them. Some of them are really funny though. Like for example, in the Alcatraz level, there's a prisoner who's escaping prison and you need to help him do things. Or you meet Bam Margera and he tells you to knock pedestrians into the water. Stuff like that. Not being able to get off your board causes for some annoyance in the game. I mean, it's definitely a gameplay mechanic that we've taken for granted with future skateboarding video games, and it really just highlights how annoying it can be whenever you're trying to set your skater up in the right way and you just can't get it right, and each time you're like flying off this way or that way and you just have to spend like 5 to 10 seconds to reset in the proper area just to mess up again. It just doesn't make it as fun when you can't get off your board and have that level of control that you're used to with other games. There is a stat point system in the game. After doing a couple of different goals, you'll be able to allocate a stat point into a bunch of different categories. I really like this. It's more direct than in, say, Underground, where basically you do some challenges and it'll say your stats have increased. In this game, you actually do get to control, like, oh, I want to put my points into rail balance first, or flip speed. I really liked that level of control and sort of like that role-playing mechanic where I get to choose what I want to be proficient in earlier on in the game. The levels are all pretty interesting for the most part. There's a couple levels here and there like San Francisco and the Dockyard that I don't really like. They just kind of seem a little bland and boring. The color palettes are all pretty samey. There's not really that many cool spots or big areas that you can do lots of combos with. I mean, I'm sure pro players, they can pull out a million-point combo wherever, no matter what level they're on, but it just doesn't, some of those maps just don't stick out in my mind. Graphically, like I said, it looks pretty close to the Underground games. The textures are all pretty good, except for the character models. Character models are really bad looking, especially for the Xbox version. They pretty much look like jagged-headed, weird people that seem like they were pulled from like the PS1 version and weren't really modeled that well. They really stand out as being particularly bad in the game. And seeing as this did come out before the Underground games, there's a little bit of jank in the controls that isn't really present in the Underground games. I think Underground is pretty much the standard to be when talking about Tony Hawk games. And this game, for the most part, like I said, it feels pretty close to Underground, but there's just sometimes when you're doing a gap or something and you're not colliding with items that you need to collect properly, and that can be really annoying to have to restart. There's times when you'll like clip through something and it'll cause a bail, or you'll be just a little bit off where you think you should land it, but you end up bailing. So there's just a little bit of jank in the overall gameplay that can cause you to mess up, and that's always really annoying when that happens. There's also some weird difficulty spikes from level to level, and also from goal to goal, if I'm being honest. Sometimes it'll be like, do a manual for like 5 meters, and then other times you'll have to do the entire length of a map pretty much in one run without messing up. And it's just really inconsistent with its difficulty. It feels like even in the early levels you're doing goals that you should be experiencing like way at the end of the game, and that also doesn't make for a really fun experience. It definitely is challenging, and I think I like that part about it, but it feels really like they ripped things from other parts of the games and just kind of mixed it around, and it doesn't really flow as well as you think it should flow. There are some unique mission types in this game that I thought were pretty fun, like inline skating or like downhill skating. There's these ones where you have to ride your board through cones and stuff all the way throughout a map. And I thought those were really fun, just because I hadn't experienced that in any of the Tony Hawk games that I've played. I haven't played a lot of the original Pro Skater games, like I said, mainly Thug background here. But I thought those were really cool to experience new types of challenges in a Tony Hawk game. There's also a level editor. If that's more your thing, you can customize your own little skate park, which is always a neat addition. I love when they add those into the game. I didn't spend a whole lot of time in it, but from the time that I did spend, you can put a whole bunch of different ramps, rails. It's your standard Tony Hawk level editor. There's also a pretty good amount of customization options. You can customize your deck, your grip tape, your wheel color, the clothes you're wearing, as well as customizing your character. You can also choose from a number of prolific skaters like Tony Hawk or Bob Burnquist. They have a whole bunch of different characters that you can choose to skate as, and they also have different stats, so you can really tailor how you want to play the game. So yeah, overall, that's my thoughts on Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 4. I liked it for the most part, and if you can find it for cheap, I would say go ahead and pick it up. Especially if you like the Underground games, it feels pretty similar to those.